4 August 18X. Today, like every day since I boarded this miserable ship, I woke up with a headache. It's probably related to the fact that my body rocks all night in a hammock, banging against the wall. Originally, since my wife has noble rank, the captain had offered us his cabin, but she, always so humble and seeking adventure, refused. I would have appreciated her asking my opinion, but she probably figured that, being of low birth, I would already be used to sleeping in the worst possible conditions. It is normal for people who have grown up with so much privilege to have a distorted view of reality, and my dear wife was never really in her right mind to begin with. At midnight, I woke up from a horrible nightmare in which my lifeless body was floating in total darkness, while invisible creatures swam in circles around it, murmuring. So as you might expect, I couldn't get back to sleep. I briefly considered going out for a walk on deck, but there is not a single light out there except for the night watchman, who considers me persona non grata. Besides, I don't even want to imagine what would happen if I slipped and fell overboard in the middle of the darkness. So I spent the night awake, trying in vain to find a way not to bump into the wall, surrounded by the absolute darkness of our cabin, where any man with bad intentions could be standing without being noticed. I would have appreciated it if my wife snored, if only to have a sound to help me orient myself in this reality, but unfortunately she seems to fall dead every night. Intending to imitate that state, I have started smoking a little of the opium we packed before starting the journey, although it never does much, and I don't like to consume more than a small dose. The 5th of August 18X storm clouds seem to have been following us since the St. Michael left the French coast. So far, the sky has not decided to unleash its wrath upon us, but instead allows a gentle drizzle to fall on the ship. I cannot understand how the sailors know where we are going, when, in addition to the rain, we are surrounded by thick fog. Today I watched the industrious sailors of the St. Michael as they worked, trying to find an observation, a joke, an anecdote, anything to start a conversation with them. I don't really like them, but they are the only people here, apart from my wife and the captain, whom I haven't seen for days. Whenever I turn my gaze to the men, I see that they are busy with something important, something necessary to keep us from falling straight into the sea, surely. It has instilled in me some respect for them, as well as a deep feeling of inferiority. I can't do anything, nor can I participate in their activity. I could ask them to teach me, but that would be humiliating myself in front of them, and it's bad enough that my wife makes all the decisions for me. As the ship rocked, I leaned against the mast, where I seemed least in the way. It was a terrible idea, certainly one of the worst ideas I have ever had in my life. The dizziness was uncontrollable, and I ended up running to the rail to vomit. I wasn't even granted the dignity of reaching it on my feet, as the wet surface made me slip, and I ended up crawling, with the vomit already struggling to come out of my mouth. I lay there with my arms hanging over the edge for a few moments. I tried to regain my good humor by thinking of happier times when I wasn't trapped on this stupid devil's ship. My mind immediately went back to my youth when I used to play with my sister. I can no longer remember her face, only her green eyes, like grass, staring at me in horror from the darkness. That's when I realized that not even in my mind could I escape the fear. As I got up, I looked over the side, where the waves were crashing like children fighting each other, grabbing each other by the neck throwing punches. Through these dark waves, I could almost see my sister's eyes. 6 August 18X. I dreamed that I was young again in a ballroom surrounded by people. However, I was the only one dancing while my wife, as tall as a pillar, watched me in silence. Taking my usual place at the mast with my small portion of opium, I heard the sailors commenting on something about a witch. Certainly these people have strange entertainments. Who would want to tell such stories when we haven't seen the sun for weeks? 7 August 18X. Today the sailors pulled a body out of the sea, slimy, white, and covered in seaweed. I was there to watch them pull it out, thinking about how avoiding my uncomfortable cabin only brought me more sorrow. The captain showed his face for the first time in days. He seemed to materialize just to point out the body floating in the distance, despite the fog. I was still clinging to the mast, despite the dizziness, and I didn't dare look over the edge while the rescue was taking place. The sailors dropped the supposed shipwrecked victim in front of me while they checked for vital signs. Sadly, they declared him dead. That's when my sweet wife arrived and, without any concern, put her ear to the corpse's chest. I would have gladly stopped her from performing such a distasteful act, but I was busy hugging the mast. The sailors certainly tried to stop her, but she is a woman who, at the end of the day, does whatever she wants. Perhaps the fact that this expedition is paid for out of her own pocket also has something to do with it. As her beautiful face, as pale as the corpse's chest, rested on the rib cage, the men turned to look at me, for the first time, with something that was more curiosity than contempt. The ship remained silent for a few minutes while she stayed there, as if cuddling with her lover, searching for a heartbeat. And she found it. She drew the captain's hand to feel the pulse, and the captain did the same with his second-in-command. Several men followed, lining up to check, to their amazement, that the sound that was not there before was there now. 8 August 18X. I dreamed that I was floating in the darkness again, while cadaverous bodies swam around me silently, imperceptible except for the movement of the water. When I woke up, dizzy and sweaty, I had the feeling that something was watching me from above. My hammock is located above my wife's, so the thing watching me must have had a head that touched the ceiling. I covered my head with the pillow and let the movement of the ship bang me against the wall. I tried to think of my wife, of the intimacy we hadn't had in a long time. I wanted to remember the day I met her at that dance, and she looked at me warmly from across the room, as if she could see inside me. However, every time I closed my eyes, my sister's eyes appeared, supplicating. 9 August 18X. I discovered, to my horror, that my beloved wife has given the strange survivor a set of clothes she took from my suitcase, which, despite my thinness, seemed to be particularly large on him. I tried to confront her, but she looked at me in a way that melted my heart. If it weren't for her, I would have gone mad weeks ago. However, coming face to face with that guy was not pleasant. My wife swears he is a normal man, if a little traumatized, but something in his gaze unsettles me. Not to mention his horrible smell. Perhaps I will allow him to keep my clothes after we reach our destination, because just seeing his greasy blonde hair sticking to my jacket makes me want to retch. I've seen him walking around the deck like a witless child, bumping into the sailors, who seem as uneasy as I am. The revived man is barefoot, making a wet sound with every step he takes, and yet sometimes he seems to appear out of nowhere to stare at you with his gray, dead eyes. My wife praises him over dinner, talking about their conversations and the places he has described to her. I haven't heard the man say a single word. Today, as I leaned over the rail for my afternoon vomit, a cold finger rubbed against mine, and I realized that the stranger had stood uncomfortably close to me to watch me vomit. He didn't seem to like my expression, but I can't say how I know, because his expression didn't change at all. His mouth remained half open, showing a few yellow teeth, and his eyes continued to stare without seeing. Soon he withdrew silently. 10 August 18X. The more I think about it, the more my wife's interest in the rescued stranger bothers me. Today I plan to confront him face to face. I don't care if he's a wise idiot or a man traumatized by a shipwreck. His closeness to her has become inappropriate. Yesterday I saw them sitting in the cabin, him contorting his body to fit into the hammock, using my wife's legs as a pillow. I've thought about it a lot, maybe too much. I should have strangled him right then and there. 21 August 18X. Finally, the tremors have subsided, and I have been allowed to leave my cabin. For 11 days and 11 nights I have done nothing but convulse and vomit. At least I have had my sweet and understanding wife by my side, who attends to my suffering diligently, just as she did before we boarded the wretched St. Michael. Wherever I look now, I only see my sister's face. I have finally remembered how she was as a child when she would come up to me and tug at my sleeve, making me swear that I would always protect her. I also see her with a broken nose and bloodshot eyes as she sinks into the water. I should never have boarded that ship. I should never have let myself be surrounded by that substance that hurt me so much when I took it away. I could have sworn the well was empty. I try to organize my thoughts, to focus on the present, and return the past to that dark hole inside me, where I threw it. It's all the fault of the drowned stranger and his dark talents. Days ago, when I set out to confront him, I approached him with confident steps and pushed him on the shoulder, as I used to do with my rivals when I was just a child. In retrospect, I must not have looked very masculine. The stranger, seeing me as upset as I was and listening to my complaints, simply ran his tongue over his teeth. Exasperated, I pushed him once more, trying to force him to react, and oh my God, how I regret it. He opened his mouth like someone opening a door, but as words came out of his throat, his jaw did not move. The sound did not come from him, but from something dark and deep, some horrible organ that must live inside his body. The hideous screams would have been enough to break me, if it weren't for what his words said. Brother, brother, please, please no. No, brother. It was her voice, my sister's voice. It was as if she were inside the stranger. The same words she screamed as I dragged her to the well, pulling her by the hair. I tried to explain to the stranger that I had done it for her own good, for the honor of the family. I told him that I had sworn to protect her from all evil, that I only wanted to teach her a lesson. The stranger looked at me with his gray, bloodshot eyes and projected another horrible voice from his hollow throat. Mine. You are a useless, a miserable. You belong to me, and only me, you understand? And after that, the sounds my sister made as she drowned. When he closed his mouth again, I moved away from him. Without even thinking about where I was running, I almost slipped and fell overboard into the sea. where I could have sworn I saw hundreds of pale faces with red and gray eyes, their mouths open, ready not to speak, but to devour me with their yellow teeth. Luckily, my wife was there, and with impressive strength, she grabbed my trousers and pulled me back onto the boat, where I collapsed. 30 August 18X. The St. Michael still hasn't reached its destination, and frankly, I don't expect it ever will. I don't even remember where we were going. Today I had breakfast with my wife and Raghav the stranger, and we shared a pipe and talked about the weather while another threw himself into the sea. What a tremendous waste of meat.